I'm Leanne Tran, psychologist who's worked with families whose kids don't fit the mould for almost 20 years. I've worked with children for decades, but I know parents are the real change makers when it comes to their kids. Having 3 kids of my own means I know it's not easy. Parent Like a Psychologist is all about simplifying how you support your kids with psychology information filtered through years of experience to take you from overwhelmed to confident. Come on in. Hi, welcome to another episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. I am Leanne Tran, your psychologist and host, and I'm really excited that you can be here with me today. This podcast episode is a little bit of a book review, a little bit of a commentary, and a little bit of advice, I guess, of how to adapt this for parents, well, how to adapt this for your neurodivergent kids. I'm talking about the Let Them Theory, a book by Mel Robbins. That's not without its controversy, but I think there are some things that we can gain from it as parents. So I wanted to first of all state a bit of a caveat, I guess, that in this book, Mel Robbins talks about the let them theory, which is something that she has devised and so kind of thought up this idea about how to think about the world. She makes some really big statements in there, like, this is going to change your life. And that disappoints me a little bit as a psychologist because I can't say things like that to you about information that I know to be true. The difference is that Mel Robbins doesn't have a background in a profession that's guided by ethical practice and that kind of thing. So she was a lawyer in the past. I mean, not to have a go at lawyers that they're not ethical. She was a lawyer, now motivational speaker, but she's not bound by a code of ethics like psychologists are. And so it's really easy for people like that to, in that position, to make big, bold statements about how an idea is going to change your life. As psychologists, we can't say that because we know that individual experiences are really different and they vary. So I know a lot of things and they're backed in science, but I can't promise you that they're going to change your life because they might not for your individual child and your individual family. So I want to start by just saying to take this idea, well, take ideas that you read in books like this with not just a grain of salt, but a big fat 3-finger pinch of salt, as my father-in-law says. Um, you just, it's just, it promises stuff that it can't deliver and it oversimplifies what is complicated. Life is complicated. Uh, so after I've got that off my chest, I think I feel more comfortable in talking about the idea because if you go ahead to read the book, you won't think that I agree that this is going to totally change your life. The other thing too is that there's a bit of controversy in that Mel Robbins has come up with this theory on her own, but there is a poet who has written a poem called Let Them, and her name is Cassie Phillips, and she's disappointed to not be credited for this work. And I think that's a really important thing to note. And Mel Robbins says she thought of it herself, but I have a little bit of a hard time believing if you thought of an idea and you're writing a book on it, that you wouldn't Google it first and come up with something like that. And even if you independently thought of it, then in a simple search, maybe you found it and it's worth crediting the person who has um, come up with or also mentioned the idea. But if we put those two things aside, I think there are a few things that we can use this book for, and it actually aligns with a lot of psychological principles that are general, but I think also can be applied specifically to neurodivergent kids and the way that you can parent them. So, I want to talk about exactly what the book is to start with. So, is this let them theory means? And there's 2 parts to it. let them, and then let me. So there's two components to the idea. And then I'll talk a little bit about what it's based on and the psychology that is accurate behind that. And then how we can adapt it to parenting, but then more specifically, neurodivergent kids. So the basic concept in the let them theory is that it it's a way to say something to yourself when people do things that you don't agree with or maybe don't like, is to say, let them do it. And the concept in put it simply means stepping back, letting go of control and letting people do what they're going to do because we can't control what they do, how they feel, and all of that kind of stuff. As it applies, well, yeah, that's what the let them bit means. I'll come back to the parenting in a second. Mel then says, like, that doesn't mean that we let people walk all over us. It means we let them do what they do, feel how they feel. And then the second part is let me. And this is where we take control of what's actually in our power, our response. So let them means let them do their thing. Let me means let me decide how I'm going to react to this. Let me decide what boundaries I'm going to keep. Let me decide how I'm going to respond. So, when we think about this idea in terms of kids and parenting, um, actually, now's a bit where I should say the Let Them theory is a book that is, that's what it's about. And that's what drew me to the book. And when I started reading it, was interested in the beginning to read that there is a supplement chapter that talks about how to apply this idea to parenting. And so here's where in the book, she talks to psychologists and theorists and experts in their field to talk about the ideas that this book is based on, and then to talk about the parenting aspect. She has collaborated with a child psychologist, Dr. Stuart Ablon, who works at Massachusetts General Hospital. So she has consulted somebody to think about how this theory applies to parenting, because we can't treat our children the same way that we treat other adults. For sure, they depend on us, so we can't just let them do their own thing. So here's some of the information that the theory in general is based on. It draws from other psychological frameworks and philosophies. One of them is Stoicism, which essentially refers to the way that people are responsible for their own feelings and for their own actions. And this is something that psychologists know to be true, but at the same time, we recognize that we can be influenced by unconscious thoughts and patterns and all of that kind of thing. But I think, in essence, what how Stoicism refers to the let them theory is that we can't be responsible for other people's feelings. We can't be responsible for other people's actions. And on the flip side, we are the only ones who are responsible for our feelings and our behaviors. And I do think that's a really important thing to recognize in life, in parenting, and in relationships. The other thing is that it's based on things like radical acceptance. And this is an idea from dialectical behavior therapy. And that's about how it can be healthy to really accept reality as it is without judgment. And so it's not about agreeing, but it's just about accepting that that is the way it is, which is kind of um, a little bit in a way related to acceptance and commitment therapy as well. In DBT, it's kind of about, reducing our suffering, because we're not focusing on wanting things to change. We're just accepting it how it is. And then in acceptance and commitment therapy, too, there's an element of acceptance about how things are, but then we take action in towards our values. And so both of those things kind of fit with this idea of let them do their thing, but then let me choose how I respond and what I do, my actions. Uh, there is then a little bit of a difference in terms of how we apply these things to parenting. And so the difference in parenting is that, well, first of all, how you might do the let them and the let me bit in terms of parenting is really interesting. Let them might mean that in parenting, it means allowing low stakes choices to be made by our kids. So to give them space to learn from experience. And this is where the child psychologist involved, Dr. Ablin, says 90% of decisions we might be able to let our kids make. We can't make them all, let them make all their decisions. They're not, they're not little adults. We can't let them do that. He gives some examples about things like maybe you can let your kids choose the clothes they wear. You can let them decide when they're hungry. You can let them choose their friends, their hobbies, or their interests. Um, Perhaps neurodivergent kids, you can extend that to let them choose whether they want to have a shower every day or not. Within the boundaries that you want to set and the values, maybe let them do things their own way a little bit more than we have been. So it doesn't mean no limits. It's about stepping back when the stakes are low. When it talks about let me, the idea might be it's that we can view parenting as not about making our kids do things. We can view it as a way of working with our children. So rather than saying, you have to do it this way, you let them do it their way. And then you think, let me support you. Let me help you. Let me guide you, teach you, that kind of thing. And that really fits with the philosophy that I follow in terms of neuro affirming practice, in terms of positive behavior support, um, and in terms of, you know, peaceful parenting too, I think, is to make the boundaries, but within that, there should be a lot of flexibility about letting your kids choose what, how they want to follow those values and boundaries. So, and this is too where then the let me support you with what you need comes into things like, let me help you regulate your emotions. Let me problem solve with you. Let me work together with you. Let me guide you. And so instead of saying things like, you have to do your homework, maybe it's let them argue, let them not do it if they don't want to. Let me work with my child to figure out when is a good time to do the homework. Let me figure out how to make it easier for them. Let me help them plan for it. So it's now that I'm thinking too, it really fits into um, another book, which I've done a review on the podcast for previously, and it's called The Gardener and the Carpenter by Alison Gopnik. And the idea is that we cannot control or form and fashion and build our children into something. They already are who we are, and it's our job to uh, tend them like we would a garden to help them grow, give them what they need so they can grow and flourish into whatever it is that they will be. And I really like this philosophy. I think it takes a lot of the pressure off us as parents day to day because it helps us see that our job is not to have perfect kids who are behaving well and doing everything they should do. Our job is to guide and nurture, help and support and teach our kids so that in the long run they can be the best version of themselves. Isn't that what we all want? How good does that sound? So, in terms of the parenting guide, I wanted to give you a couple of the highlights. And this is from the supplement that's co-written by Dr. Adlon, and it outlines how parents can use let them in real life. I've mentioned some of these things before, but it's about, first of all, thinking, let them, so releasing control about what your kids do. So let them make small choices, let them feel their feelings, let them try and fail, let them practice decision making. These are all some examples of things that you can let your kids do. Let them make a mess. That's what kids are designed to do. That one's a bit controversial and it's a challenge in my house, but that's something I can get better at. Then look at the other side. Let me. So this is about managing our own response. So let me pause and regulate myself. Gosh, isn't that one like that's hard to do? But if we did that all the time, let our kids do what they're doing and then let ourselves just take a pause and regulate, how much calmer would our household be? Let me step in only when necessary. That's one that I'm practicing lately, especially in terms of sibling stuff. Let me just step in when I need to. Let me work with my child. So approaching things together rather than head on. And let me offer guidance without rescuing or without forcing. And so, some examples of that might be a bedtime within limits. So, it's not that you don't have bedtime, it's that bedtime is in between 8:30 and 9, and let them choose between that what they want to do. It could be homework choices. Let them decide when they do homework and, let me set it up for them. Let me remind them. Let me do a visual schedule to encourage them to do it. And in terms of even things like friendships and social difficulties, it could be let them try, let them have a go at friendships and, you know, let me support them with what I need, sorry, with what they need. And maybe it's giving advice, but if your child chooses to play with that one kid you don't like, then you just kind of, let them and let them experience and learn from that. Um, I think as I'm talking to, it speaks to a lot of resilience that can be developed by letting kids be responsible for their own emotions and their own behaviors. And of course, we want to support them, and we can do that. But I think this maybe gives us a little bit of space where it's not our responsibility for how they feel and behave all the time. And so this gives us a little bit of grace as well to know that we're trying our best, but we can't control how they do everything. I think there are some caveats for using this, and it's not a license for permissive parenting to have no boundaries. You've got to be really thoughtful and respectful, not hands off and absent. That's definitely not what we're saying. And it's a tool to use when the stakes are low, not when safety is at risk, obviously. Um, so, health, safety, well-being issues, and that kind of thing. Before I finish up, I feel like I'm in this big rush today because it's late in the day and the kids are already home from school, and I'm feeling that like pressure to get stuff done before I go and help them. I wanted to just talk briefly about then how this applies for neurodivergent kids. And I think the let them theory applies for them, but also for you guys as parents and me even as a parent too. And what I want to say a lot is that society has so many demands or expectations about how kids should be. And imagine if we could just let them go and not worry about what other people think about our kids and our parenting. If we use that let them theory, like, you know, the other parents at the playground or at the school drop off when your kid's having a massive meltdown or in the shopping center. they're overwhelmed and they're breaking down, and you can see those judgmental looks from other people. Imagine if you just could let them have their reactions and that it did not bear on you at all. Imagine if you could just think, well, let them think what they think, let them pull their faces, whatever, and let me do what my child needs me to do. Let me support my child, love my child, validate my child. If we could let go of all of those expectations that make parenting so stressful, I think about what a nicer experience it would be. The other thing is that there are lots of expectations of what it means to be normal or typical that I don't think we should expect neurodivergent kids to live up to. And so, what if we let go of some of those expectations as well? The if people have people, I'm talking your parents, so your kids' grandparents, other people in your family, even health professionals. We've got so many opinions about expectations about things that kids should have a shower every day. That's super hard for autistic kids who hate that. Um, Even at a conference I was at this week talking about, does everyone have to eat dinner at the table? Do you have to eat dinner together as a family? Is that just a neurotypical expectation that we're forcing on kids that it's just not right for? And by that, are we forcing it on you as parents, and it's just not right for your family? It's stressful for you. Um, if all of those things that other people think is normal or typical that don't fit for your family, if you could just let that stuff go and think, let them think that, but let me do what my kid needs. Let those other people say whatever, but let me do what is right for me and my mental health and my stress levels. I think that could be a really, really good approach to let go a lot of this stressful baggage that we just don't need. And then so it's a little bit about letting go of what other people and society think and letting us do what is the best for our own children. But then also too, in terms of how you do this for your kids, letting them have a lot more freedom and autonomy is going to help the kids who are anxious. It's going to help the kids who um, have a persistent drive for autonomy or don't like demands and want to avoid them. It's going to potentially reduce the stress levels of all kids with, or not all. See, I can't say that, right? Because that's that thing where I can't promise it for everybody. But what if it reduces the stress levels for lots of kids with ADHD or autistic kids, and reduces your stress level as a family and whole, if as a whole, if you are reducing the expectations on your kids and letting them choose and making their own decisions. So as I was listening to it, I think it is based on a couple of good ideas and some solid psychological principles there. I would say for neurodivergent kids, it's aligned with positive behavior support in a way, which is trying to um, not focus on punishment and control of behavior, but instead focusing on, first of all, safety, but then in the context of that, trying to focus on building a kid's skills um, and supporting the things that they can't do yet for themselves. And so, listening to the book, I think while there are some hesitations, I do think the idea of letting go of other people's opinions and judgments and expectations can be a healthy thing if we're then focusing on what we can do to support ourselves and look after ourselves and support our children doing what they need for their, practically, but also for their mental health and stress reduction and all of that kind of thing. Parenting's hard enough. If we can Yeah, just focus on doing what feels right for us, learning what we need to do. Like, no one's perfect, but I think drowning out all of the noise of other people's expectations and feelings and standards maybe is going to be a positive thing for us all. It's not a hard book to read. I listen to it. Mel reads it herself, which is always a feature I like in audiobooks when they're written by the author. So if this kind of resonated with you, I think, you know, and there's not much in the theory either. So I've kind of explained it all in this podcast. If you have listened to this and think, yeah, that's enough, I understand and I can go ahead and do that. You don't need to listen to the book. I mean, I probably shouldn't say that. Mel would not like me saying that. But um, whereas if you think, oh, this is really interesting, I'd love to hear more or hear about it in more detail, then go ahead and read the book. And it is interesting. It's easy to read. And I hope that it sparked something in you today to think a little bit differently about our relationships with other people, their feelings and expectations and behaviors, and so that of our kids, but also the people judging our parenting. Uh, Let me know if you've got any feedback, if you agree, don't agree. I'm always interested in conversations like this and uh, really love learning from books. And it's one that I don't regret reading. And yeah, hope that you've learned something today. It's perhaps, I wonder, it started out by Mel Robbins writing this book and then child psychologist writing the supplement at the end, and then you've got me maybe adapting that in terms of how you can apply it for neurodivergent kids. So I'm hoping that not too much has been lost in the translation of those multiple steps. But if it's something that you're interested in, I really recommend having a listen. Let me know if you've got any good book suggestions, maybe about life, parenting. I would love to have a listen and we can share some more information on it together. Thanks for listening to this episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. If you found it helpful, please share on Instagram so other parents can benefit too, and tag me at Leanne Tran Psychology so that I can say a big thank you. Head over to leannetran.com.au to join the village for bite-sized psychology tips straight to your inbox. I really hope this podcast has brought a new perspective and you a step closer towards a calm parent and a thriving child. Have a delightful day.